When mankind ventured out into space, we never suspected what was to come. Our first inhabited planet was less than 30 light years away, far closer than we would have thought. The issue? Everyone was dead. The entire planet was like that. A perfectly stable world with no issues that we could determine, and yet it seems the suicide rates were the greatest cause of death among the people. We don't know why, but they apparently had been doing this for some time. Years of study later showed that the reptile-like race had taken nearly 10 times as long as we did to reach the industrial age, and had not gotten very far beyond that. Time went on, and we soon discovered that this was not an isolated occurrence. Species after species had killed each other and themselves off for one reason or another. Some had died off so early, only a few stone monuments marked that they had ever been there. Some had established empires spanning nearly a dozen systems, but always they were all dead, down to the last child. And so we traveled the stars, colonizing the lost homeworlds we found, along with others. We studied the creatures on many worlds, although none bore intelligent life. In time, we studied the technology of the more advanced dead races, gleaming a scientific secret or two we had missed. It was rather amusing to see the scientific community collectively slap their heads when they see the simple ideas and concepts they had missed. Once, and just once, we found a sentient race still alive, on a planet with 3/4 the gravity of Earth. A planet primarily dominated by jungles bore a race of insect-like scavengers. They were barely beyond the Stone Age, farming and agriculture still in its early days. We considered making contact, but in the end, decided against it. They were a very violent race, and many would kill one another for the smallest detail. Suicide also seemed to be something they would resort to with little or no good reason. In fact, the entire race seemed insane. Long-term observations showed that after hatching, the individual would slowly but surely go insane, to the point where none reached old age. In fact, the only reason this race had not yet gone extinct is a combination of high birth rates, short lifespans, and a child being able to defend itself hours after birth. In any other race, this bizarre affliction can and did drive them to extinction. For nearly 700 years, mankind grew and expanded. We did not find another living race during that time, or find out how we were immune. Many came up with theories, but none fit better than any others. Ethnic, religious, and cultural differences became less important when you were away from Earth, and in the end, those who could not agree simply lived on different worlds. The UTA, United Terran Alliance, controlled over 87% of mankind's colonies from its seat of power on Earth. A few rogue factions cropped up. Piracy and smuggling saw a rebirth in this new space age, and mankind went on as it always had. Then a moment that would change our history came. The UTA Dreadnought, Supremacy, was in essence a city in space, constructed with our most advanced technology to the point where systems were updated during construction, and having a length of nearly 7 miles, it was the mightiest ship we had ever created. The Supremacy was sent to investigate a new world our long-range sensors show had space-age technology upon it. It was farther out than we had ever traveled before, but not by much. It was assumed that this would be just another dead world, that we might find some usable raw materials pre-harvested in the form of abandoned constructions in orbit. What we found was an outpost of a spacefaring race, its people still alive and well. Dozens of ships were in orbit around a rocky, empty world, along with a space dock to repair and refuel them. They were remarkably primitive compared to our own, and much smaller. The largest was perhaps the length of a football field, if that. From the scarring and damage, along with the derelict ship floating nearby of a different make, they had been fighting not too long ago. Our first contact did not go so well, however. We would later piece together what happened, and it went something like this. As soon as what might have at the time been the largest spaceship in the galaxy appeared on top of them, the race known as the Condor were sent to the edge of panic. The commander tried to keep a disaster from occurring and ordered his ships not to open fire. Communications on both sides failed. We ourselves had long ago stopped carrying any equipment or training our crew for first encounters, and apparently the Condor had not had any first contacts of their own in hundreds of years. It also didn't help that our subspace communications were just advanced enough that the garbled words the poor Condor picked up on their outdated systems sounded horribly sinister and alien, even by the wide standards of the galaxy as it now was. One of the Condor gunmen on the closest ship had a panic attack after hearing our garbled transmission. He fired upon the Supremacy, which in a placating gesture had lowered its shields. The shot was able to breach the hull at a single point and cost the lives of 3 crewmen. The captain of Supremacy ordered the shields raised and a warning shot fired. Unlucky for the Condor, the concept of warning shots was alien to them, and they did not stop to ask why the single shot had missed. It was a short fight. The Supremacy blew away a single craft to secure its escape victor. A sad but necessary tactic. This only hurt our reputation further, with what happened later. As we soon discovered, nearly 3% of the galaxy was part of what was known as the Veil of Madness. Any race within this sector of space would slowly but surely go insane. Short jaunts were safe enough, but more than that, and permanent damage to the mind would result. We had apparently been sitting in the galactic equivalent of the Bermuda Triangle and had finally breached its edge. When the Condor realized that both our entrance and escape vectors lead directly into the veil, a panic started. With surprising speed, news spread among their people, and among others, of what had happened. The story grew worse with each retelling, especially once it left official military reports. Tales of the titanic black ship that came from beyond the veil, sent out signals in a horrid dark language, obliterated dozens of the Condor's finest warships in seconds for no reason, and then vanished like a ghost soon spread everywhere. Humanity had become the bogeymen of the universe. Raids from pirate groups further cemented our dark reputation, and in time we came to work with the role. Every attempt to convince people that we wanted fair negations was seen as a deception. Rather than fight a losing battle, we played to the role given to us. Soon we were seen as wicked but not unreasonable, and gained both fear and respect throughout the galaxy. Few humans appeared in view of aliens outside of deliberately frightening power armor, and human ambassadors used voice synthesizers to sound like that first garbled communication had. Looking back, it's actually worked out in our favor. After years of contact, most alien races know almost nothing about humans other than exaggerated horror stories. They rarely bother us, and the ones that do never return home. The only bit of info we were more than happy to share with them was the reason we can live in the veil. Turns out we were all a little crazy to start with. I think the fact that we're pulling the largest practical joke in the galaxy was already proof enough of that. I admit I was bored. The negotiations were the usual. Humans can do this and that so long as they don't blow up this or that place. They may not kill so-and-so. In return, they are allowed all the X amount of Y they want. Blah, blah, blah. The air conditioning in my suit malfunctioned, and the damn thing was getting stuffy, which did not improve my mood at all. So when recess was called, I decided to step out and see Kanasi for myself. For those of you that don't know or don't care, the Condor are still very sore about our first contact. They fear us, yes, but below that layer of fear is a simmering hatred. Kinda like a child has against his parents when they ground him. Anyway, I'm strolling along the city streets, the locals giving me and my bodyguard a wide breadth, when I stumble upon a Cineplex. Normally I wouldn't be interested, but the title of one caught my eye. 19. First Contact. I asked the fellow at the ticket booth, and he tells me that it's about when the humans first made contact with his race in the ensuing war, which is weird because the history books don't mention much about a war. So after he's done urinating himself, I decide to purchase a pass to watch this bit of comedy. And that was when I saw how exaggerated the stories of our race have gone. The average human movie is at most 3.5 hours long. Condor flicks last longer, and this little number was a whopping 6.7 hours. Thankfully, it was already starting, so I did not have to see the previews. The room was darkened and was relatively conditioned, so I opted to remove my helmet, something I know I should not have done, but hey, it was dark. Everyone was focused on the opening parental advisory and reminder to shut off all extra-source communication devices. To take more caution, I sat in the back where no one was positioned, so I believe no harm was done. It felt nice to cool down. It started as your typical film, We Zanen, that's what they call themselves, like us calling ourselves human, have always looked up for our answers. We sought life out there in the galaxy, and the very souls we reached out to reached back to us. In time we thrived. In time we established ourselves as a major power everywhere in the known verse. Except the veil. Then it cuts to our section of the galaxy, which of course looks nothing like it really was. It's basically hell in space the way they portrayed it, full of derelict ships, planets that look all funky, and suns imploding on themselves, etc. Not true at all, but real, good special effects. All ventures into the veil had met with failure. All who entered it were never heard from again. It was a wasteland, someplace we knew no life could exist. It seems what we know and what the galaxy knows are two different things. Cheesy. Ass. Line. So as we all know, the Kandar were fighting the Gox Union that was aggressively expanding its borders into Allied space, and a Kandar security fleet had just defeated a Gox scouting fleet. It was a nice-looking battle. Plenty of special effects and explosions. Then they expand beyond the battle. It was taking place at Station 19, the Veil checkpoint. One that trafficked all ships going into the Veil, though mostly it was to keep aliens with more balls than brains from going straight into the death trap of our home. So the Kandar are repairing themselves, yeah? And that's when they come to the main character of this story, the captain of the Convos. That's right, the very Convos the Supremacy shot down. So Captain Kosag is talking with his crew about the Gox getting more aggressive and the problems that would cause, and was debating whether or not to requisition more ships for patrol, when his ensign, I think that was an ensign, I can't remember Kandar human rank equivalents, pointed out they were getting a strong energy reading. I'm sure you and I both know this is bullcrap. We were running in slowly, so our energy output was minimal. They wouldn't have been able to detect the ship until it got to, well, the station. And we both know both of us were caught with our pants down when we saw each other. But the Kandar still see it in a different way. Few Kandar, aside from diplomats, ever see a human as a human. And for reasons I still don't know, they have not disclosed our appearance to the public, and so many are still in the dark as to what we are, only having blurry, Bigfoot-esque photos to go on. Whoever directed this had an interesting imagination. We are bipedal. That much they got down. But they believe we got mandibles where our cheeks should be, and that we have 3 eyes, holes underneath our arms that sprout tentacle-like appendages, for invasive procedures, as I was to learn later, and that our ships look more like a set off a horror flick than a ship. So our ship drops into their system, and the first thing they do is pan to the humans, showing what's going on inside. Apparently on the Supremacy, the captain... Hang on. It still makes me laugh when I think of it. Those idiots got our whole language wrong. It's like they took whatever words of our language they thought sounded coolest and mashed them together to form our language. The grammatical errors and accent are so atrocious. For a second I thought, what the fuck is he saying? So, the captain says, in the subtitles, interesting, fresh meat. This will make a nice change to the usual prey. Though, in our language, the way he says it is, mash up, tasty food, nice kill hunting spree. And the other human in subtitles replies, yes, over captain, though he says, affirmative caption. No, I did not spell that wrong. That's what he, she, it said. I didn't even know we had an over captain in the Navy. They seem to know our ranking system better than us. That was sarcasm in case whoever's reading this could not pick it up. Anyway, the over captain then says, inform the lesser beings that the hunt begins. Tell Bugs fight start now. Yes, over captain. Affirmative caption. So the good guy Kosag takes action and aligns the fleet in a pincer formation preparing to fire. When the captain of the fleet, some fat guy, tells him not to fire. The two get into an argument. The captain of the fleet is obviously being made out to look like some pompous buffoon that wanted peace with a bunch of murdering baby eaters. You know, a cliché. Then the infamous transmission comes. It's staticky, but what I could make out was it sounded like, how are you, gentlemen? All your base are belong to us. Wow. Deja vu. The captain of the fleet says, hold your fire, they are trying to make contact. And then the Supremacy blows his ass into a half cup of atomic matter The ever-famous warning shot was a kill shot. COSAG takes control of the fleet and orders everyone to open fire, doing a lot of cosmetic damage to the ship's front end. And the Super Mechi goes all out, blasting nearly the entire fleet to scrap in a matter of minutes. And there's a lot of scenes of Kandar dying horrifically, like getting burned, exploded, torn in half from shrapnel, getting sucked out into space, getting vaporized by a plasma shot. And then the Super Mechi captain says, pitiful things. We leave. Hopefully they will provide better sport when we give them time to prepare. Stupid. Go now. Frown bad. Ball our game better with practice swing. Yes, over captain. Affirmative caption. And the Super Mechi starts to turn back towards the Veil. COSAG, battered and bloody, pushes a corpse off the command console, starts manual override, and drives the Convas into the Super Mechi's way, letting loose with everything he has. The over-captain gives the order to cripple the ship but not destroy it, as the crew's fighting spirit interests him. Beat crap out of, but no shit beat. IU him like of playtime fight. And so the Super Mechi blasts the Convas with its main cannon, which we know was not placed on the front, and blasts the ship aside, but doesn't outright destroy it. COSAG then is informed life support, and damn near everything but the engines is shot to hell, and he decides to abandon ship, but not before he rigs the Convas to do a suicide charge right into the Super Mechi's side. The Convas explodes, causing the shields to drop, and causing a sizable dent in the Super Mechi. Afterwards, COSAG falls unconscious, and the screen goes black. The crowd is silent for a moment. The only thing he was me trying to hold back my giggling. Damn, that was funny. Thank G. Buttaliahine, no one heard me. I stopped for a moment to look down at my watch to look at the time, and only a single standard hour had passed. I had to sit through 5 more hours of this? I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I didn't get a choice as the film resumed. COSAG coming to in a medbay of a Kandar cruiser, the Konkin, I think it was called. So COSAG goes through the usual bullshit in these kinds of flicks, dealing with a top brass that thinks he hit his head too hard, with the usual nothing can live in the veil stuff that they've been spouting since the beginning of the film. So it goes on to COSAG temporarily relieved of duty while he fully recovers from his head trauma. Enter love interest, the surprisingly attractive doctor, and I mean attractive by human standards, who at first does not believe COSAG, treating him as another mental patient. But as the scene keeps shifting to the supremacy glassing made-up planets, people obviously are starting to get suspicious, including the doctor, who starts asking about this phantom ship. Of course, we never glassed any world. Admittedly, we blew one up, but that was when we thought it was uninhabited. But humanity had made only 2 other major incursions into Kandar space, both done by pirates. The rest were minor skirmishes that didn't happen until way after first contact. Eventually through a 2-hour-long reel of drama which I slept through, except for the sex scene. That was actually pretty interesting. Didn't know a Kandar woman was that flexible. COSAG is delivering a message to the gathering. Basically every branch of their government meshed together into a sausage fest of epic proportions. Warning of this race of planet-killing maniacs. Even with the overwhelming evidence, the gathering is hesitant about making war, especially while Goks are still fighting them. Suddenly, Goks transmission. They shall ally with Kandar after our atrocious crimes committed against them. In reality, all we did was drop out of warp kinda close to a flagship. Close enough to where we tore through the whole thing as we decelerated, and then obliterated the entire 1 Saint 2nd and 3rd fleet when they retaliated. We still apologized, but them Goks know how to hold a grudge. Of course, with the overwhelming evidence and the support of their one-time enemies, the Kandar go to war. Except the cliché corrupt politician, and by some political bullshit the Kandar have, he stalls the whole vote. I would explain why that worked, but it would take longer than watching this damn movie. So COSAG is still grounded for massive drama before the Goks interrupt, pledging their aid against us on some kind of blood oath that apparently overrides the other guy's override. Finally, some real action. So the Allied systems, alongside the Goks Union, form this huge fleet to combat the human fleet, which by the way looks like someone copy-pasted the supremacy several hundred times over, COSAG is given command of the Con-Sen and placed under the command of another commander, one that was obviously red shirt material. And I was right. After the not-so-motivating speech about how they were the galaxy's last hope, they started fighting our fleet, which was just twiddling its thumbs waiting for them in a random tract of space. And it wasn't 3 minutes into it that the captain of the fleet gets torn in half by teleporting boarding parties. The ensign tried to make a brave show of it, but she only killed one human before she was restrained. Remember those tentacle things I was talking about earlier? Yeah, tentacle rape. Humans aren't the only one with that fetish. Interesting to watch, though. So then it turns away from the massive galactic battle to COSAG, whose ship lost power. And since the people by the reactor are not longer responding, cut to reactor room filled with that goop they call blood, while humans are eating, raping half-dead Kondar. He leads a team to go down there. An action flick quickly becomes a horror flick, as the human hunting band hunts the team down one by one. Eventually only COSAG is left, who manages to kill the entire hunting party but one, who teleports him back to the Supremacy. The overcaptain, who despite never meeting him, knows COSAG instantly and gloats over his triumph. Then faster than you can say plot hole, he breaks free and sacrifices himself to kill the overcaptain, pushing him into a reactor core, which by the way you should never leave open. For some reason that ended the battle. Apparently our chain of command is destroyed when you kill our captain, so afterwards we retreated back into the Veil. COSAG is hailed as a hero, hooray and all that. Then some stirring speech from COSAG, a subtitle that says 20 later. Humans are back, but we find a massive fleet waiting for us that blow us to bits. With COSAG as captain of the fleet, of course. And it ends with the same Kondar from the beginning saying, "We Xanon have always looked up for our answers. We sought life out there in the galaxy, and the very souls we reached out to reached back to us. But the galaxy is a fickle place. Some of the very beings we called out to were not interested in peace. Some were more interested in slaughter. Cut to human hunter guy. Some in sport. Cut to overcaptain. But we Xanon shall prevail. We have before, we have now, and we always shall." And then the rolling credits play as the lights slowly come back on. I fumble to get my helmet back on before anyone turns, and it clicked into place thankfully quick. The Kondar seem oblivious to me, talking among each other what they thought of the movie. I thought it was all right. Never thought of humans as looking like that, but damn, they look ugly. COSAG never did any of that, though. I thought he retired a drunk. Well, you know these movie producers, big on action, little on history. I like the movie for once it shows us fighting back. I couldn't resist. I thought it was a load of crap. I mean, is the guy dead or not? When everyone looked at me, I couldn't help but crack a smile. Of course, they couldn't see it under my helmet. That's probably what got them all screaming and running out of the Cineplex. I certainly had fun for one evening. Later on, it became a cult classic because of some rumor spread that all who watch the movie and talk bad about it will then die from angry human spirits bound to the essence of the film or something. Wonder how that got started. I think I'll ask for a copy of that film during the next meeting. Taken from the Journal of T. Rolfayek, currently promoted to Chief Diplomat. From the audio logs of Haran Grethunk, our group was handpicked from the best of each race in our alliance. The smartest Kragag, the fastest Urlok, the most nearly invisible Slyarn. We had a cutting-edge ship and the best funding we could get while still remaining a secret project. We had enough engine power to bug out to near FTL in under 50 seconds, and to FTL in 2 minutes. We had state-of-the-art stealth technology. Despite all this effort, every last one of us was a poke away from voiding their bowels. Our mission was utter madness. We were going to enter the Veil and spy on what we believed to be a human space installation. The Veil itself is immaterial. Whatever it is, no sensors can detect it. We've only learned its boundaries by trial and costly error. However, when we passed the border, we all shuddered as the realization hit us. We were in human territory. If we got caught, we were beyond aid. We had to be quick to avoid the effects of the veil, so we had been inserted not too far from the target, which appeared at this range to be an observation station. A single hangar, one of those damnable human shield emitters, which our people were furiously trying to counter, and a number of vicious-looking spikes that could send all manner of death our way. A chill ran through us all as we neared scanning distance. Hopefully, the stealth tech would work and we could get done without incident. "Hey, Bob, get a load of this." "What is that?" "Not like any ship we've seen before." "Yeah, it's new, I guess. From the lowered emissions, I think it's supposed to be stealthed, but we picked it up about 7 minutes ago. We traced the vector and it entered the veil about half an hour ago." "Half an hour? A stealth vessel? Those bastards are trying to spy on us." "What should we do?" Everything was going smoothly. Our sensors were having trouble locking onto the station, but that was expected. A few more minutes and we could begin the scans. Then, our ship's lights flashed red, and the captain's display flashed warning signs. We had just been pinged. A ping is a detection method, much like a sonar ping. It's a definite, "we know you're there." And when we realized what it was, half the crew really did void their bowels. The captain ordered an immediate turnaround, and the mission was scrapped. We escaped to FTL in record time, but even that success was dampened by the failure of our mission. Our superiors will not be pleased. 2 worlds. Yes, that's right. I not only negotiated the release of the Gox occupation, but I also got 2 whole, uninhabited worlds out of the deal. How? Well, it wasn't easy, seeing as how I had to present myself before the entire cohesion. That was a task in itself, as dozens of representatives from each of the Unionite races were all staring at me. First of all, it was a nasty situation. Some screw-up didn't realize the same patch of territory we had our eyes on had already been claimed by the Gox Union. So when 2,000 colonists come down in full bodysuit, the Gox see it as a damn invasion force. After half of them are killed and the rest held hostage, I am called to the damn negotiating table. It was bad. I knew the Gox still didn't like humans after our, first encounter. And the embassy reflected that. They clearly didn't even want us on the planet, as it was crappy, let me tell you. The food sucked, the services were terrible, and the rooms cramped, and basically a poorhouse with gold-lined plates. Not the best position for me, as I was still deciding exactly how I was going to negotiate the release of 1323, or our folks, to a union of 5 different races, all of whom despise us. A shame, really. The Quixa women are kinda hot. Anyway, I'm getting carried away. So the embassy is crap, I established that much. But since I figured no speech I give could stir the hearts and minds, or whatever they use, to our position, so I started studying their political system more in depth. That was when I stumbled upon something very interesting. With it in mind, I started making additions to my speech. A lot of additions. When the Union wants to negotiate something with a race outside the Union, they do it in something called the cohesion. It makes them seem more intimidating when I'm speaking to their leaders and their delegates. The leaders don't say anything, but instead relay what they want to say through their delegates, which I find stupid because my translator picks up what they're saying anyway. By day, I step into the room where all cohesions are held. The Quixa delegate is looking really, really hot. Thank the Holy Spirit of Budhala, my suit was covering my erection. They are all staring down at me as I arrange my papers and begin my negotiating. Naturally, they refuse like they always do, but I knew of a little thing called outer's plea, where an alien to the Union may do what we humans like to call a filibuster, and talk endlessly about anything. The Unionites pride themselves of being master bullshitters, even so far as training themselves to withstand hours of useless jargon. But they have yet to meet me. The helmet works to my advantage as it relays everything I say in a monotone drawl. This annoys the crap out of them as they realize what I'm doing, and that it means they have to sit down, shut up, and listen to me for however long I'm going to talk. I first explained the rules of human poker, a favorite pastime of mine. And then I linked that to the appalling conditions of the embassy. Suddenly, there was my filibuster as I started going down the list of problems. Starting with living conditions, I talked for 3 hours straight about how hard it was for me to stretch my limbs in my room. The delegates were getting uncomfortable in their small seats. Next, I went on and on about the comm services and how expensive it was. I would pause briefly for a drink. The delegates would look hopefully thinking I was finished, then resume much to their disappointment. 14 hours in, I am thanking the additions to my suit injecting endorphins in me, so I don't feel my legs cramping up. The delegates have requisitioned blankets, as even they realize that I am probably going to go all night. As the night rolled into dawn, I stopped listing my complaints about food and moved on to complaining about the restrooms. For Unionites who have been consuming water all yesterday, it was torture. I started off complaining about the size of the toilet size, how there was not enough liquid inside, how I could not find relief from the narrow pipes. Imagine then developing half-inch pipes for a full-inch arsehole. It was a brutal experience that I relayed in grisly detail. I can tell that one or two were crossing their leg appendages, while I was grateful for the waste collection pouches in my suit. I was nearing the 24-hour mark when I started talking about the massive dump I took when the JERA delegate called for a break. Phew, that gives me time to write new material while they went to the bathroom. When they came back, I could see them slightly refreshed, but their hopes died as I dramatically took a long roll of paper and unrolled it, letting the bottom comically slide on the floor. Day 2. They had enough. Just as I was about to go into detail how the minibar in my room had more poison than alcohol, they stopped me mid-sentence. Not the delegates, but their leaders. They seemed much more willing to reopen negotiations just as long as I stopped talking. In less than an hour, our people were homebound, and with 2 new worlds in our pocket, I thankfully slipped out of my suit for the scrubbers, the poor bastards. I took a long, gratifying shower when I had company. Quixa delegate. Yes, you know where I'm going. She liked how I handled the cohesion, and how she always had a thing about humans and that mysterious armor we wear. I offered to show her that there was nothing to be afraid of, and she accepted a little too eagerly. Yeah, I banged her. And guess what? You know those headlines about us establishing an effective diplomatic relation with the Quixa? Replace that with effective sexual relations, yeah. I banged an alien babe. I released 1,000 human hostages, got us 2 more planets, and made peace with an alien race with my penis, all in 1 week. But enough about me. How are you doing? Transmission from Chief Diplomat T. Rolfayek to Chief Diplomat Guter Barba. Rolfayek is pending promotion. The chambers of learning were abuzz that day. Only those greatest in position amongst the science caste were there, not even a single of the overseer class, nor a warrior to keep the usually easily frightened science class controlled. Manes bristled as those there sought to contain their excitement, but failed. In any other place or time, such base display of emotion would shame the members of the science class, their entire family taking the short penance at once. But this day, none sought overseers, nor informed on one another. It was the most special day. They would this day converse with a human. Since the day that the humans had emerged from the veil, those of the science caste given the unenviable duty of studying the veil had gone from barely being above the labor caste to being considered for rebirth in the warrior or even overseer caste. All they would need do is find the secret of the human ability to withstand the veil, and their newest births would be blessed. But no revelations had come, much as they studied and prayed and experimented. Many lost themselves to the veil's madness, for nothing. But mere 2 passages ago, the warrior caste had found a smaller, weaker human ship wandering at the borders of the veil. The battle had been long, and many of the warrior caste would not know their rebirths. But the greatest of all the prizes that those in the science caste had ever dreamed of was captured. A living human. One who could be studied, discussed with, and if the science caste had their way, dissected for their purposes. As finally the door opened, all eyes turned to it. The slight ruffling of manes now carefully controlled the only sound any heard. And then entered the human. A size and a half of even the mightiest warrior caste, but somehow disappointing. This was the creature that had emerged from the veil. What secrets could such a strange creature hold? Though large and wide, it had no fangs to defend its rebirths as they formed, only two manipulators, and its mane did not even cover its entire self. Devices carefully designed for such purpose quickly scanned and measured the body, but manes settled. This thing was obviously no threat to a room full of even the science cast, much less with the warrior escorting it now in the room. It was led to the central dais, and swiftly the science cast surrounded it, settling back against their hold legs to peer curiously. And then the human bared its teeth, and manes fluttered in fear. HFY stepped forth, one manipulator nervously settling the last errant parts of her mane. She had won the right to address the creature in a simply trial, by formulating the position they would take with this particular human and accepting the outcome on her and her own, solely. Should she succeed in finding answers to these creatures' immunity to the veil, her rebirths would be overseers at the least. If she failed, her last rebirths would likely not leave the vats. A four-manipulator lifted the translation device so painstakingly researched and filled with words, and she spoke. "Human man, we give you hellos." "Hello. Excuse, this translator is experimental. We seek understandings of your veil madness, the lack." Part of HFY's mane ruffled slightly as the human turned its eyes, and only two, to her, and it displayed its teeth again before speaking. "Made by the lowest bidder, huh? I'm over Captain Howard L. Kraft, since we're being polite and all." Hearing a human speak through the translators was an event. Perhaps the young science cast who had constructed it had performed better than expected. Not only were the human's words understandable, but it almost seemed to catch the emotion it had in them. Amused, perhaps? So unlike the broadcasts they had heard from human ships. The room itself seemed to relax, as the human's feelings suffused the room. They were like us, not simply some monsters in human form. "Apologies," HFY replied, playing with her device until it seemed the feed stabilized, already adapting to the conversation. Truly magnificent engineering after all. "I am HFY, of the science class. Your people have an immunity to the madness of the veil, and we would benefit greatly from an understanding of such matters. If such an understanding was found, you could return home to your caste with the honors of our people, and our overseer's apologies for the manner which brought you here." The human, Howard, leaned back against the dais. In the only one-half passages since the science cast were told this meeting would occur, there was no time to adapt the room to the human's needs, so its comfort was not accounted for. Unknown to the human, as the conversation had begun, infusions had been put into the air to aid openness and trust. The science cast members in the room had, of course, been inoculated against these, but they seemed to be functioning on the human well, and indeed with eyes just faintly starting to list. It's an old story. I mean, before we even left our home planet. You know, you don't really think about things till they hit you right in the face, you know? We always thought it was just old stories. Tiny rustles of anticipation were seen in the manes of the scientists across the room. The human was obviously under the effects of the infusions, as it spoke. Long time ago, like I said, before we left our homes, we knew there was something else out there. Not, you folk. And here an arm waved at the crowd, who despite themselves inched back. A brief reminder that this thing was significantly more powerful than them. So they were watching us all along, these, what you call them? Gods? Maybe. That's what we thought of them as. Anyways, they stayed out of reach, just watching us, letting the madness overtake us and laughing about it, till one day they came down to see what the madness was doing to us close up, and some lucky human caught them off guard and found they weren't gods after all. And then that lucky human ate his god. Mane is bristlet at that, and a few of the science cast even flared fully. None would report that, of course, in light of this. There were beings who maintained the veil, and humans had killed one, and, still under the madness, devoured it. What manner of abomination was this? The human, still in the grips of the infusions, apparently unknowing of the effect its words had, continued. And then something strange happened. He wasn't mad anymore. So he waited till another one was there, and did it again, but shared it with others, and then again, and again. And when they had kids, whatever was in them baked into their skin, and no humans were mad anymore. The old things drew back from humanity, thought to leave us on our planet while they kept their madness going. But we changed, and every time we unlocked more of the world, we found them, again and again and again. The burst of amusement from the human was anything but reassuring this time. Now there's none left that we can find, but we will find them. Hope I get to be the one to do it. I've always wanted to know how they taste.
If you finish this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.